I am Reverend Dr. Karen Georgia Thompson. I serve in the United Church of Christ as the Associate General Minister for Wider Church Ministries and as the co-executive for Global Ministries. I also serve on the World Council of Churches Central Committee and on the Executive Committee, and I am excited to be here to host this webinar on statelessness. I want to start our time together with a poem that I wrote a few years ago entitled Complicit. Measure the silence in beats of compassion. How long before you speak? The world needs your voice to speak while others weep. Silence is for those who sleep. Measure the silence in the breaths between their screams. How long before you hear the sounds of hearts breaking? In defeat and despair, silence is for those who don't care. Measure the silence in the depths of their teardrops. Another child dies in her mother's arms. Hunger gnaws at their bellies, no food for miles. Silence is for those spewing bile. Measure the silence in the heartbeats of the hopeless. Cry because you must, because your soul aches for justice, grasping at peace. No need for despair. Silence is for those who won't hear. Measure the silence in the syllables of repackaged truth. The system is abusive. Justice is elusive. Scream your truth. Run from hate and fear. Silence is for those who are living dead. A stateless person is an individual who is not considered a national by any state under the operation of its law. The exact number of stateless people is not known, but the estimates indicate that there may be as many as 10 million stateless people globally, of which approximately 1/3 are children. Statelessness is mainly caused by discrimination because of ethnic or religious affiliation. It is often a product of policies that aim to exclude people considered to be outsiders, regardless of their ties to a particular country. Also, a factor is discrimination against women, with 27 countries in the world having nationality laws that do not allow women to pass nationality to their children in the same way that men do. Individuals living without any nationality are rendered invisible. They face discrimination and marginalization and are often minority populations in the countries in which they live. Rights taken for granted by many are not afforded to stateless people. They cannot own property and often have challenges accessing services such as education and healthcare. Our silence on this issue is not an option. As people of faith and a part of the Christian community, we are encouraged to speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. We are encouraged to seek justice for all. Today, we bring voice to this discourse on statelessness to bring about change for millions who are living as stateless people. We will now hear from our first speaker, Katerina E., who was born in Soviet Central Asia and came to the United States as a child shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. She has been living in the United States as a stateless person for more than 2 decades. In 2017, Ekaterina co-founded United Stateless, the first and only US-based human rights advocacy organization led by stateless persons dedicated to solving statelessness in the US and globally. An activist, a swimmer, and a professional artist, Ekaterina is currently residing in North Olympic Peninsula of the United States.
Greetings, friends. In today's world, access to most basic freedoms and human rights is linked to having an effective legal nationality. And yet, more than 10 million people worldwide are affected by statelessness, including myself. My name is Ekaterina. I'm a stateless person living in the United States, a country that at present has no legal framework to address statelessness, and yet has an estimated 218,000 potentially stateless or at risk of statelessness persons living on its territory. Stateless people routinely experience a host of challenges, such as inability to access identification documents, inability to work, go to school, access healthcare, or proper legal counsel. A prolonged and often repeated detention is always a threat, and for many, it is an ongoing reality. Stateless people living in the US are unable to leave, so seeking solutions elsewhere is not a possibility. Since international travel is not possible, many have been separated from their families for decades. In December of last year, US government made a commitment to prioritize statelessness, but we've yet to see any real developments. This is, of course, disheartening, for time is a precious resource. For me, every year I spend stateless is another year that I'm unable to spend with my family, whom I have not seen in nearly 30 years. A stateless experience is one of compounded issues, limitations, and isolation. Yet, I'd like to speak for a moment to something that has and continues to give me hope. My personal stateless journey led me to becoming an activist and an advocate. And as I continue working alongside other stateless activists and allies, I'm starting to see a shift, a change. There's a growing recognition that in order to solve statelessness effectively, we must center the voices of stateless people, and that members of the impacted communities must be empowered to express themselves safely and to be given opportunities to participate in decision-making, something that has been largely missing in the initiatives of the past, especially from large humanitarian organizations such as the United Nations. The collective voice of stateless people is getting stronger, and this does give me hope. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the International Declaration on Minority Rights, as well as the 8th anniversary of the I Belong campaign. It is a known fact that most stateless persons in the world belong to minority groups. Most are still living on the territories of their own countries, having been stripped of their human rights due to discrimination based on race, religion, ethnicity, or gender. In light of this, statelessness is perhaps not only a problem to be solved, but rather a unique and powerful opportunity to examine and interrogate a deeply flawed global system, and perhaps, in time, through this work centered in values of mutual respect, boldest possible inclusivity and equity, we will solve statelessness and achieve a better world for all people. Thank you.
Thank you for that moving testimony, Ekaterina, and a reminder of the many challenges that are facing stateless people. Being stateless is like being excluded from the family. Such a poignant reminder for us who often take for granted what it means to live in the places where we are. This year will mark the 30th anniversary of the Declaration on the Rights of Persons Belonging to National or Ethnic, Religious, and Linguistic Minorities. This is also known as the UN Declaration on Minority Rights. We welcome Professor Fernand de Varenne, who is extraordinary professor at the Faculty of Law of the University of Pretoria, South Africa, adjunct professor at the National University of Ireland, Galway, and Sheng Yung Tung visiting professor at the Faculty of Law of the University of Hong Kong in China, and also visiting professor at the Université Catholique de Lyon and National University of Ireland. He was appointed United Nations Special Rapporteur on Minority Issues by the Human Rights Council and assumed his functions on the 1st of August 2017. Professor Varenne.
Bonjour. Hello, everyone. Please allow me to congratulate the World Council of Churches for this webinar on the anniversary of the UNHCR I Belong campaign, and also this year the 30th anniversary of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Persons Belonging to National or Ethnic, Religious, and Linguistic Minorities. This is an opportune time to recall that discrimination is the root cause of the lack of citizenship of most stateless people. And as the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, pointed out, if we want to end statelessness, we must address this discrimination. To be absolutely clear, statelessness not only aggravates, it often leads to the almost complete denial of the rights of those affected in education, healthcare, employment, and the right to participate in public life. We must remember that the I Belong campaign is not about living with statelessness or even trying to attenuate its consequences. It is a campaign to eradicate statelessness. And it will be impossible to eradicate statelessness or even diminish it unless it's always kept in mind, as the UNHCR and I have done on many occasions, including in my 2018 report to the UN General Assembly, that statelessness is mainly a minority issue, and that more than 3/4 of stateless are persons who belong to minorities, and that their denial of citizenship is the result of discriminatory laws and practices. This is what has occurred with the Rohingya in Myanmar, many Russian minority in the Baltic states and Roma in Europe, Dominicans of Haitian descent in the Dominican Republic, and many others. And this is also why there is an imminent danger of a huge increase of millions of more stateless people, because many individuals who belong to Muslim and Bengali minorities in India right now are in a process that could lead to their statelessness in the next few years. My report and communications from myself and other UN Special Procedure colleagues emphasize the discriminatory nature of these processes, and that what is involved is not accidental or somehow natural occurrences. These raise the specter of extremely serious and massive violations of one of the pillars of international human rights law, the right to equality and non-discrimination, which can result in extreme forms of exclusion and denial of the most basic rights in almost all aspects of daily life, and even lead to humanitarian crisis, as we've seen with the Rohingya. The UN Declaration perhaps helps in emphasizing on numerous occasions that minorities must be treated without discrimination in all areas of life, and that includes in how they are treated in matters of citizenship, determination itself, as well as the right to participate effectively in cultural, religious, social, economic, and public life. All of these human rights are denied in the cases where large numbers of minorities are targeted and denied citizenship. Unfortunately, the international community, including the UN and the UNHCR, have not done enough to focus and target on these main causes of statelessness in the world. And that's the main drivers also in countries that have created millions of stateless who are members of specific minorities. That is the understanding and approach which should be planned and applied for in the next 10 years to try to address the growing global threat of statelessness. Merci, thank you, et bonne délibération.
Thank you, Professor Varenne, for that reminder about the International Day, but also around the work that the UN is doing and the ways in which, as people of faith, we can be involved in being global advocates for change.
Consider for just 1 minute what it would be like if the country you were born in and had lived your whole life didn't consider you a citizen. No country did. You belonged nowhere. That is the shocking reality for millions of people who have no nationality. They're stateless. Most people are citizens of somewhere. We have birth certificates, we have passports, we have ID cards, we have driver's license, health cards, documents proving who we are. But on paper, stateless people simply don't exist. In fact, I can't even tell you how many stateless people there are because over half of all countries don't even count them. Globally, countries that are counting have accounted for nearly 4 million people. But in all likelihood, the actual number is much, much higher. Without a passport or a national ID, the list of things you may not be able to do is never ending. Go to school, see a doctor, own a SIM card, work legally, open a bank account, own or rent a home, even get married. And statelessness exists everywhere. It's not a problem in a far-off land. It's happening in countries like yours or mine. You mightn't even have heard of statelessness. I hadn't, and I was staggered to learn of the devastating impact that statelessness has on families all around the world. So, how does this happen? In the chaos of fleeing war, families can leave or lose the papers that are proof of ties to a country, and that can make registering the birth of a child impossible, leaving them stateless. Or borders can change or dissolve completely, for example, after the fall of the Soviet Union. And in some countries, if your parents are stateless, so are you. It's passed on for generations. Other countries prevent parents passing on their nationality if their child is born abroad. Some countries discriminate against women and don't let mothers pass on their citizenship. Ethnicity, language, religion, they've all been used as excuses to exclude entire groups from being citizens. More than 3/4 of all the people known to be stateless are minorities. Rohingya Muslims of Myanmar, Roma communities around the world, and others whose families moved generations ago to the country where they now live, but were never acknowledged as citizens. And when I went to Bangladesh, nothing could have prepared me for the depth of suffering that I saw amongst the Rohingya refugees. Stripped of citizenship in Myanmar nearly 4 decades ago, they have faced discrimination, persecution, and exile ever since. So, what can we do? For lawmakers and courts, we say, you have the power to challenge and change the laws that lead to statelessness. More and more countries are signing up to the conventions that aim to end statelessness. In some situations, it can be complex. It can take time, effort, and paperwork. In others, it takes a few words or the stroke of a pen to give people the rights they deserve, to give children the chances and opportunities in life they so richly need. Either way, it's a man-made problem that we can solve. Let's do so, because everyone has the right to belong.
We now hear from Radha Govil, and Radha is a senior legal officer for statelessness in the Division of International Protection at UNHCR, where she has worked on issues relating to nationality and statelessness since 2010. Radha helped to develop many UNHCR policies on statelessness, including in relation to the definition of a stateless person under international law, standards in the 1961 convention, and conceiving the I Belong campaign, that's hashtag I Belong campaign to end statelessness, and its implementation framework. She has worked closely with the WCC since 2014, participating in a number of its statelessness trainings and workshops and webinars for WCCC members. Welcome, Radha.
The World Council of Churches' collaboration with UNHCR to end statelessness has been a model partnership in many respects. For the past decade, since 2013, when the World Council of Churches' 10th Assembly requested the WCC to take up statelessness as one of its programmatic priorities, we have seen the WCC work closely with UNHCR and other partners to become one of the strongest advocates on the global platform for everyone to enjoy the right to a nationality, and a staunch supporter of the I Belong campaign to end statelessness. from raising awareness of its own 350 member churches through a sustained program of regional workshops, to engaging with youth faith leaders, to producing its own publications on statelessness, and facilitating and promoting an interfaith approach to the problem of statelessness, the WCC has demonstrated a level of commitment, collaboration, and creativity whose impact is being felt. The WCC also serves as a role model for the kind of role that faith-based organizations can play in advancing the rights of stateless people. I have seen firsthand how the WCC has been able to successfully translate the language of human rights into a language that millions of faith believers understand and respect. Addressing exclusion and promoting equality becomes welcoming the stranger. Inclusion and enjoyment of human rights becomes compassion, do no harm, and belonging. This work is vital because of the enormous potential that faith-based organizations have to directly reach those who are affected by statelessness, faith believers who need to know about the issue and provide their support, and to influence those in positions of power. Since 2017, when the WCC organized the first Interfaith Symposium on Statelessness, it has played a central role in working with scholars of different faiths to develop the world-first interfaith affirmations on belongingness. The 10 affirmations offer a framework of interreligious understanding of how statelessness can be addressed through an interfaith approach, which is something that the Multi-Religious Council of Leaders is now taking forward. As we enter the final 2 years of the I Belong campaign, we can look back and see the hand of the WCC in so much that has been achieved, from reforms to gender discriminatory nationality laws, to better systems for birth registration and improved rights for stateless communities. As UNHCR steps up its own actions in the final 2 years of the I Belong campaign, we are counting on the WCC to step up with us and others to benefit as many stateless people as possible before the campaign concludes in 2024. As we look beyond the 2024 horizon, we are thrilled to have the WCC as part of a multi-stakeholder task force, which is helping us to set up a new global alliance to end statelessness, which we hope will seize the successes and momentum of the I Belong campaign to propel a new era of international cooperation and determination to put an end to statelessness.
Radha, thank you so much for your words. And thank you also for your collaborative engagement over the years with the World Council of Churches. The work that we do together makes a difference in the world. Thank you also for the reminder of the many intersectionalities between statelessness, women's rights issues, children's rights issues, and the many ways in which minority rights and gender discrimination is yet another layer of compounded challenges. Now, listen for these words coming from Subin Mulmi's participation. Subin Mulmi is Executive Director at Nationality for All. Subin is a human rights lawyer and researcher based in Nepal. He recently worked as the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Advisor from Mercy Corps. But before that, he worked for Forum for Women, Law and Development in Kathmandu as the program coordinator for 4 years, and then as the senior legal advisor for a year, where his responsibilities ranged from project planning, implementation, advocacy, litigation, and research on statelessness, migration, and human rights. In particular, he implemented a project on civil documentation supported by UNHCR. We are thankful to have Subin with us.
Hi, my name is Subin Mulmi, and I'm the Executive Director at Nationality for All, or NFA. And NFA is a regional organization working to address statelessness in the Asia Pacific. And today I'm going to talk about statelessness and explain why statelessness is an intersectional issue. It is no coincidence that 2/3 of the world's stateless population belong to minority groups. Minorities that are marginalized from the power center have little role in shaping the citizenship laws of the country they reside in. It is often the dominant groups that stipulate the eligibility of acquiring citizenship, and they are the ones who issue the citizenship documentations as well. More often, it is the same dominant groups that define what it means to be a national and equate belongingness to the nation with belongingness to a specific race, religion, ethnicity, caste group, or any other identity. Another dimension to the discriminatory citizenship law and practice is gender discrimination in citizenship law. Countries that have a deep history of patriarchy and that continue to uphold patriarchal values and practices have nationality laws that does not allow women to confer citizenship to their spouse or their offspring in the same capacity as men. This is a cause of statelessness for children who are not eligible to acquire citizenship from their foreign fathers. But more importantly, this shows the state's acceptance to create stateless populations in their own country and treating statelessness not as an issue or not as an international obligation to address, and completely ignoring the human rights implication of protecting and respecting the right to nationality of people, but looking at citizenship solely through the lens of nationalism and trying to preserve a certain social identity, equating citizenship to belonging to this particular social identity group, and in this case to men. Most experts, again, would say that discriminatory nationality laws are the primary causes of statelessness, which is true. But let's examine this even further and try to understand what the causes of the discriminatory nationality laws are. And when we do a deeper dive into it, we'll find that there's often the imbalance or the differential in power between the dominant and the oppressed or marginalized groups that result in these discriminatory laws. When marginalized groups have access to more power and have access to decision-making process of determining who the nationals are and what laws there should be in terms of citizenship, only then can discrimination in citizenship law be eradicated in law and practice. At times, this overtly human rights and international law focus to addressing statelessness is extremely documentation-centric, where it is assumed that with legal reform and access to nationality documents, statelessness can be resolved. However, there are many cases where positive legal reform and access to nationality documents, or even attainment of nationality documents, have not resulted in equal treatment as citizens because the discriminatory practices, attitudes, values, and mindset have not been reformed. This is the reason why statelessness is an intersectional issue. Statelessness is a feminist issue, and it can only be addressed when there is equalization of power among all genders, race, religion, caste group, ethnicity, and only then can reform in nationality laws result in addressing the causes and impacts of statelessness.
Thank you, Subin, for your presentation and for connecting the dots for us around the intersectionalities of statelessness and so many issues, and for reminding us of the need for just a strong lens around how these things all come together. We as people of faith need to be making these connections in our work and in our conversations as we seek to be advocates for change. Now we will hear about how statelessness can be eradicated. It is possible to see the changes that we are proposing here. We are going to hear from our last speaker, who is Maha Mamo. And Maha Mamo is a global speaker, a human rights activist, and a TEDx speaker on issues of statelessness. She herself is a former stateless person who later acquired Brazilian citizenship. She was born in Lebanon to Syrian parents, but could not acquire any citizenship due to her parents' religion, which was Christian and Muslim, and due to the restrictions stated in the laws regulating marriages in Syria and Lebanon. Welcome, Maha.
In October 4th, 2018, I obtained the Brazilian nationality after living for 30 years as a stateless person. I was so incredibly happy that I thought that was it. I was afraid that I couldn't ever be happier than in that moment. With the help of many incredible people and the efforts of Brazil diplomats, the UNHCR, government officials, and my own efforts by speaking up on behalf of the stateless people worldwide, I made it. Nothing could possibly feel better than that. I was wrong. After the nationality, I could finally unlock my full potential as a person, as a human being. I could finally dream higher, believe in my potential, be my full and true self. I gained my freedom. I visited many countries all over the world, met incredible people and cultures. I launched my book. I got a formal job, opened my own company in Brazil and in the United States. I got married. I bought my first house. I signed contracts, including a movie contract based on my life story. For the first time in my life, I had my political rights assured. I voted. I kept advocating on behalf of stateless people and making sure I never stopped fighting to end statelessness worldwide. I partnered up with the UNHCR, the World Council Church, and other actors from the civil society in different locations and participated in seminars, events, workshops. I made sure to tell each and every person I know that we still have a lot more to accomplish to end statelessness worldwide. I contributed in changing the laws in other countries as well, not only Brazil, like Argentina and Colombia. I gave speeches to Fortune 500 companies. I was featured in many TV shows. I was on newspapers' front pages. I was featured in the New York Times as well. I feel this is just the beginning of my life. Today, I'm 4 years citizen old and more than ever, I know that everyone has the right to belong.
We have been on a journey in this moment, a pilgrimage, if you will, on this issue of statelessness. We have heard a variety of views, and we have ended on this note of hearing from someone, from Maha, who acquired statelessness. What a joyful moment. We celebrate with her, even as we continue to be advocates for the millions who also need an end. A story like Maha's that says, I belong. I have found the place for me. Let's add our voices to this campaign. Let's add our voices and our prayers, and let's be advocates for change. Let's be the change that we want to see in the world. Thank you.